It might seem unremarkable to many people about how excited I am to be able to just sit around and work out mathematical equations. It's a strange experience in my life to have so much time by myself and by choice. It wouldn't be my original choice, though. I'm simply continuing my solitude. Now, it's not a complete solitude as in being a hermit and closed off from the rest of the world, because I spend about 6 hours every day, usually an average of about 5 hours every day, in a bookstore in some different city, reading and writing and working out equations. And there was a time when I was joyfully with someone all the time, every single day. As many hours awake that I possibly could be, and I enjoyed it so much. But as reality is, people come and go. People live and die. And the person that I know I have loved more than anyone else before and up until that time is gone. And it is quite a painful experience. However, I regard the experience of the grief that I feel. I've been forced, if you will, to regard it in a certain way. And it's interesting how you can pretty much find ways to process things based on different life experiences you have. And being a self-defense instructor and fitness trainer, I've processed grief by analyzing it in the regard of being like a weight. Someone could go into a gym or somewhere where they have weights to work out with and find 100 pounds and make their attempt to lift it, and if they could, it would be very difficult for them. Someone who doesn't work out. It's like the same thing as someone who has never experienced such a heavy amount of grief before. But if the weight, that 100 pounds, is lifted consistently and in the right way consistently, then eventually it gets lighter. Now, I intentionally said it gets lighter on purpose to then make this next point, which many may have heard before, but perhaps not in this context, although I have been saying this in many different speaking environments for quite a while. The weight itself doesn't get easier to lift. The force of gravity is not getting significantly weaker. The mass of the weight is still 100 pounds. What's happening is that by consistently lifting in the right way, you get stronger. So your experience of it is easier because you become more efficient at doing it. In the same way that works with grief. The grief that I feel and that many people feel, I would imagine, because I don't know how other people process grief, but it doesn't get any lighter. It doesn't it doesn't diminish in any way. That's at least my experience of it. What happens is I've become more efficient at processing it. Now, I'm also being very particular about not saying, getting over it or moving forward or moving on, because that's not what's happening. I'm simply more efficiently processing it. But even just me talking about it just now disturbs me. And I've had to do as much as I possibly could in this moment to prevent from sobbing and breaking down, just thinking about it. But in general, I have become more efficient at processing the grief. Because although I find it very healthy in my private moments to break down, to cry, to sob, to weep, to mourn, normally as I go about my day, usually it doesn't happen. And a side benefit of that is that I've emotionally become stronger because I've been able to more efficiently process the grief. So that other things that come at me, other provocations, other possible stimulants to trigger emotional behaviors, have much less of an impact simply because I'm stronger, much stronger, due to that consistent and methodical way of processing the grief. And so I've noticed that from the experience that I stated earlier of having so much time alone, which is also a symptom of the loss and grief that I've extended. And one of the correlations of that is when I've been alone and have time to think and dwell on things, that's when I'm most vulnerable to breaking down. And what I've noticed is the lifting of this grief, like the lifting of the weight consistently and in the right way, that in my moments of solitude, which are now very consistent also, there is a lot of emotional strength in every single way that has even fortified my ability to focus and concentrate, that I have very long bouts of studying and working out equations and reading and writing, and my productivity has increased an incredible amount. And there are various other factors to that, one of them being someone who has loved to study for a long time, but it's become much more efficient. And a lot of other things have gone by the wayside because of that. Like, I don't have any negative judgment necessarily about how people decide to self-medicate or even just to become intoxicated. I used to do it a lot. I would drink so many people under the table, as they say. And I've smoked a lot and done lots of ecstasy and lots of LSD, acid, all that stuff. Smoked cigarettes, vaped myself enough clouds to blanket the earth. But one of the things I've noticed about becoming more efficient at processing grief in the right way, remember, consistently. It's not just any old way. There's ways of processing it. One of them are those things I've mentioned. For the first 7 months, that's what I did. I drank myself to blackout sleep. But then by deciding to process it first by going back to the gym again and training in martial arts and in lifting weights, and then going out to play music and joining a band and performing, and then starting to write books and curate collections of my poetry together to publish. All of those things became more healthy ways to process my emotions. And as that continued to carry on, they became more of a focused purpose. And those purposes have changed and updated as time has gone along, and I've continued to get better and better to the point where I even look at 6 months ago, as little as that, and seeing how much I've changed due to the level of embarrassment I feel about who I was then. And to a lot of people, they would consider 6 months ago to be a short period of time. And in the scheme of things, for most of our lives, those of us who continue to live on, it is a short period of time. But so much have I changed in that time. And it's in large part due to embracing solitude, processing my emotions efficiently, becoming more focused, and continually updating and upgrading my purpose. And it's having a more focused purpose that has allowed me to shed away those things. Now, it may not be the same for everyone, but this is my personal experience. I've noticed that the more purpose that I have, it's inversely proportional to my desire to want to self-medicate with drugs or alcohol. And I include nicotine and marijuana as those drugs because those are the primary, or the only ones really, at least in the past 20 years. I used to do a lot of hallucinogens, LSD specifically, and then ecstasy, I don't know what they call it now. But all of that stuff has completely shed away due to having a more focused purpose. And also encouraged me to continue to embrace solitude and to focus on these things that I've found myself enjoying so much. It's amazing how those little things become so enjoyable. Who would have thought that I would be passing my time and enjoying it by working out mathematical calculations? And also being able to ponder, to have that solitude, that time to ponder, to think about certain things. For example, coming up, I'll be submitting the plans for a device that measures the one-way velocity of light. And I'm tentatively calling it the Panoptimeter. Pan meaning all, opti meaning light, and meter meaning measure it. So the all light measurer, all light meter, all light measurement, Panoptimeter. And because it's going to have one of the designs of it has a radius of 1 kilometer, I'm playfully calling it the Kilometron. So the Kilometron is simply one scaled version of a general device for measuring the one wave of velocity of light, which is a Panoptimeter. And that this comes from, I know of a structure called a Panopticon. And of course, Kilometron comes from the word kilometer, to measure the speed of light in 1,000 meters, a kilometer. So that's the Kilometron. So that should be fun. But I think that it's such a significant thing to be able to have designed that submitting these plans for engineering, I really need to keep everything about it except for the name, of course, and a few specifications, which, you know, people who want to do this already would maybe have thought of that already, a 1 kilometer radius. But that also gives away part of maybe the design, maybe more than I should. But that's it. Solitude and the lifting of grief has become a blessing of what I once felt was a curse.